Folks, welcome back to the PlayAction podcast. We got a very special episode for you today. My guest is Tej Seth, who was an intern with Pro Football Focus. He's a bright star in the football data community. You can get him on Twitter at TejFB Analytics. Like I said, really got a bright future in front of this kid. Follow him on Twitter. He breaks stuff down. Really does a great job. Tej, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Okay. Now you do a lot of work. A lot of stuff. Like I said, you did some stuff for Pro Football Focus. You have the Michigan Football Analytics thing, and you're really active on Twitter. What would you say your general goal is when you're breaking this stuff down? I had a conversation in March with Jordan Sperber, who does some real in-depth film breakdowns for college basketball. And I loved what he told me. He told me that he wants fans to be able to watch and understand, watch basketball smarter. How would you describe what your goal is, what you're doing?
Yeah, it's a very similar goal, actually. A lot of the stuff I look at is stuff that I'm interested in, like things I think of while I'm watching games and stuff like that. So when I go and I do data analysis on a certain topic or I make a certain graph, it's something that I was really interested in and wanted to see. And then if I'm interested in it, I watch football very similar to a lot of other people. So I hope that other people are interested in the same stuff. So then I'll go and I'll turn it into an article or post it on Twitter or something. And then usually people are interested in that type of stuff. It's always good to look into that different type of stuff and to make us more aware of football given how complicated it is and stuff like that.
Okay. Now, how'd you get into this? I mean, obviously you have a strong background in mathematics, very knowledgeable football fan, so you obviously have a passion in football. How did this start? Was the math first and then football, or vice versa, or what?
Yeah, it was a blend of both while I was growing up, basically. I was always really interested in the stats behind sports, and then I obviously loved watching football when I was younger. So when it was my freshman year of college, and COVID hit, and we got sent home, and we were in quarantine. I was sitting around. I was getting a little bit bored, and I remembered that I had seen some of the graphs that Ben Baldwin had made during the school year, during the football season, and I was like, I wonder if I can recreate some of those graphs and maybe change the parameters around and stuff like that. So I started teaching myself how to code in R and do that type of data analysis. And then it's kind of snowballed into this whole thing where, I kept trying to pick up new concepts and topics of stuff like that, and then was able to put together actual data analysis that I thought would be helpful.
Okay. Now, one of the things I've noticed just following a lot of you guys on Twitter is how open you guys are with sharing your information. And, sometimes when you're talking about, in another world, people that are betting on sports or whatever, they get an edge and they find something, they want to guard it and they just want to keep it private. It's a little different for you guys, but you guys are so open, and it's like, hey, this is how I got here. This is my, this is how I got to this point. Is that more about the football data community, or is that more of the mathematic community? Where does that come from?
Yeah, I mean, it was so important for me to have open source code, code that Ben Baldwin or someone else had made to look at when I was starting to code and to program and stuff like that. And so I think we all started with that similar path where we were looking at someone else's code, copying it, maybe changing a little bit. And then eventually we did that so many times where we were able to do it from memory and start experimenting on our own and stuff like that. So that's why I tried to be so open about what I'm working on, because I know there's probably someone out there that wants to do something similar. And if I put my code out there or put something out there that I find, I think that it can help a lot of people also go down the same path.
Okay. Now, what are some of the, when you're breaking this stuff down and looking at the data, what are some of the common misconceptions you see in football where either fans or executives or coaches, these long-held beliefs you think they have, where maybe the numbers don't exactly back up these beliefs?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the main thing is setting up the run to do play action, or just establishing the run in general. That really hasn't been found. It's been researched in tons of different ways, and it doesn't seem like running more gives a team better play action ability or establishing the run leads to more wins, actually. The only thing that we've been able to find is if you rush, more efficiently, it can open up areas in the passing game for you because defenses stack the box. So that's a conception that coaches have that's right, but establishing the run isn't really a thing that coaches should follow when they're game planning and stuff like that.
Okay. And obviously, with this whole data thing in sports, I think Moneyball is kind of the thing that most sports fans can understand. Is football in a Moneyball type era right now, or is it going to get there? What's your thoughts on how involved all this data will eventually be when it comes to NFL and high level college football?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's not there yet. If you look at like the Dodgers analytics staff, it's a list of like 20 people. Baseball is really, really into it right now, and they've been ahead of the curve for a couple years. And then basketball, I would say, is at the right spot right now where they're using a lot of data analytics. They have these big analytics staffs and stuff like that. But football is behind. Football is pretty behind compared to those other sports. The Ravens have the biggest analytics staff in the league, and that's like barely a double digit amount of people right now. So still half of like what the Dodgers are doing and what some NBA teams are doing. So football is hopefully going to get there eventually. There's a lot of stuff to do with the tracking data, like the next gen stats stuff, that is still pretty unexplored, but starting to get there. So there's definitely room to grow, and I hope they get there eventually.
Okay. Now, one of the terms you'll see a lot if you read Tej's stuff is overexpected. Can you just kind of break that down and how it applies to all the different positions and players that you guys are looking at?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, overexpected is basically what I try to do for every type of stat that there is out there right now. Just because it adjusts for game situation, and not all game situations are the same. So if we take like rushing yards over expected, which is probably the one I've put the most time into, getting a handoff on a 3rd and 15 when the defense is kind of just playing prevent and they're okay if you run it, it's pretty easy to gain yards there. But if you're getting a handoff on a 3rd and 1, like at the goal line or something like that, it's a lot harder to gain positive yardage and stuff. So using yards per carry is not the right way to evaluate running backs, but when you adjust for all the different types of game situation, the offensive line blocking, defensive strength, how the defense is lined up, and the down distance and yard line, then you can get rushing yards over expected, which is more predictive of performance from year to year for running backs.
Okay. And as I said, you did a lot of stuff for Pro Football Focus, a lot of interesting stuff. You talked about, the best way to evaluate running backs. And I know you did one piece on the way NFL teams should evaluate college running backs coming to the league. What did you find there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that was something that I thought was really interesting. That when I worked on college rushing yards over expected, what we figured out was when they have these rushing yard over expected rushes where they get like 5 to 10 yards, like those are usually controlled by the offensive line opening up holes, or the way the defense played, like if the defender in college missed a tackle or something like that. But the really translatable part of running backs is how often they have explosive runs, like runs that go 10 yards over expected. And that's because that's something that they can control. Like once they get up to the second level of the defense, that's just the running back skill there. Like their elusiveness to avoid tackles, like from the safety, and their speed to run past corners that might be there to tackle them and stuff like that. And so that translates well to the NFL because it's the same thing where the 0 to 10 yards rushes are usually controlled by game situation and defenses and offensive line and stuff like that. But once you get over that, that's really where the running back can control their extra yardage.
Yeah, as I really like that idea of trying to, really nail down and see what is impacting what. And another piece you did is kind of breaking down yak yards, the yards after catch. And you found out, what did you find out there in terms of what was the most dependent on?
Yeah, it's most dependent on receiver separation. So oftentimes we think of, like some really strong yak guys and again in the draft, like you can think of like, oh, this it's really good for him to have like a high yards after catch. Like we're gonna draft him high because of that. But it's really tough to translate Yak from college to the NFL, just because it's based on like the how far the pass is, because in screens and stuff like that, there's going to be higher yards after catch, and then how open the receiver is. So we can predict like receivers yards after the catch without actually knowing what it is, pretty well even before they actually do it. So it shows that a lot of it is just situation dependent.
Okay. And another piece you did was about box counts, and the way defenses probably should start changing their thought process. What did you learn about when you studied the box counts in the NFL?
Yeah, this was the one where I put the most time into. Like I was thinking about it like while I was sleeping. I think like it popped into some of my dreams. But so what we found about box counts was that there's another misconception I think that goes around the league that says if you play light box counts on early down, so like 5 or 6 men in the box, it's going to leave you susceptible to getting gashed in the running game because there's not enough guys to tackle the running back or to get past the offensive lineman blocks and stuff like that. But I didn't find that to be true no matter which way I looked at it. All I found was the lighter boxes you play in the passing game, the easier it is to stop the pass. It decreases the efficiency of the quarterback when there's only 5 men in the box compared to if you stack the box with 8 men and stuff like that. So that's definitely a shift that we could see in the NFL with the Rams defense being so successful last year with those like light box counts. So it'll be interesting to see if other teams follow that principle too.
Do you guys have a favorite or favorites among coaches in terms of who actually uses this stuff? I know you mentioned the Ravens. I know John Harbaugh is a guy they've mentioned a lot. You just mentioned the Rams. I've heard Kyle Shanahan's name a lot. Are there favorites among yourself of coaches or teams that really employ this stuff more than others?
Yeah, there are definitely teams that employ PFF stuff and analytics more than others. Yeah, the Ravens, like I mentioned, are definitely the sharpest team in the league, in my opinion. And then the Browns too have been really sharp these last couple of years. I mean, just from a team building perspective, the way that they went like all into secondary this past offseason and in free agency, getting John Johnson and Troy Hill, and drafting JOK and stuff like that. And then you even see it in the coaching decisions. Like Stefanski last year was second in the league in go for it rate on fourth down, I believe. And then in that first game against the Chiefs, he went for the 4th and 3 without hesitation on the first drive of the game. And then when the Chiefs had a penalty on the extra point, they got the ball at the 1 yard line instead of the 2 yard line. So they went for 2 because they knew that was going to be, the chance of converting was higher than 50% there. So that's just that's cool to see like the data played out, and like the Browns have definitely showed that they're one of the smartest organizations in the league right now.
Okay. You mentioned JOK. My full-time job, I cover Notre Dame for IrishSportsDaily.com. Shout out to IRSD. What is it about JOK? What was it about him that made him a good pick, from your point of view?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, JOK is special because it's the Swiss Army knife type of player. We saw how excited everyone got over Isaiah Simmons in the 2020 NFL draft, and then it's very similar when it comes to JOK, because even though he like is listed as like kind of like a linebacker, his real specialty at Notre Dame was covering the pass and stuff like that, and that's the main trait you want out of a linebacker, out of like a hybrid linebacker safety, like whatever you want to call it, because the NFL is a passing league now, and the ability to stop explosive passes is what wins football games for a lot of defenses. So JOK should be able to help the Browns do that as long as they find the right fit for him.
Okay. Anybody that follows Tej on Twitter knows he is a Matthew Stafford fan, diehard. Are you a Lions fan as well?
Yes, yeah, Lions fan as well.
What was it like to watch? How was Matthew Stafford wasted by Detroit, and what was it like to watch that as a fan?
Yeah, he was wasted by Detroit for a couple of reasons. The number one reason was not finding the right play caller for him. He had spurts with different play callers, usually at the beginning of their tenure in Detroit, but there wasn't anyone there like McVay that used Stafford's abilities on the field, like his play action ability. Since 2019, he ranks first in play action expected points added or play action PFF grade. Um, he's been really really good at play action, but no matter who the offensive coordinator was, they were using play action under the league average. So that was pretty disappointing to see. And then another reason was the fact that Calvin Johnson, as good as Calvin was, I think it hurt Stafford's development a little bit. Stafford became a better quarterback when Calvin retired because Stafford's first couple of years in the league, if his first read wasn't there, he could just chuck it up to Calvin, and Calvin will almost always come down with it. So Stafford didn't really learn how to read defenses the way that he should have, and we see a lot of new rookie quarterbacks that have done well. They have like offensive-minded, coaching staffs and stuff like that, and Stafford had Jim Schwartz, who was more of a defensive-minded coach when he started off. So I think it was the accumulation of all those things, and just playing in Detroit is tough in general. It's tougher to get free agents for discounts and stuff like that. You sometimes have to overpay. So it was all of those things coupled together that made him not live up to maybe his like draft status or not live up to his abilities. But I believe he can in LA this year.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. What was it like to watch him Sunday night? Was that about what you expected? And what do you expect from him moving forward with McVay?
Yeah, Sunday night was probably one of the best nights of my life. It was, that second pass that went for a touchdown. Like I did not expect them to start that hot. I thought, new quarterback in a complicated offense might take a couple weeks to get going, like Brady did last year in Tampa. But I thought they might be clicking at the end of the season. But the fact that he was able to go out and have one of the best performances a new quarterback has ever had with a new team was just really special to see. And it's like it's those type of games that make waiting over like a very long off season. Like football has a very long off season, and it gets kind of boring at times. But it's those type of games that like make it really worth waiting. And I guess he's second in MVP odds now behind Mahomes. So like I never thought he would get that high, but it's just really special to see right now.
And you're high on the Rams moving forward this season? I mean, you think that, are they still kind of undervalued by, the public?
Before the week one happened, I do think they were undervalued by the public, but now they're probably either valued correctly or even a little bit overvalued. Their defense got to play, Andy Dalton week one. So as they start to see tougher quarterbacks without John Johnson and Troy Hill, who left in free agency, and just typical defensive regression, the defense probably won't be as good as it was last year. But they definitely are in that like tier 2 of teams behind the tier 1 of the Chiefs and the Bucks, I think.
Okay. What else stood out to you week one? I mean, obviously small sample size, but what jumped out to you and caught your attention when you were watching the games on Sunday?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, continuing with the theme of new quarterbacks with new teams, like Teddy Bridgewater and Jameis Winston had some great performances on Sunday, and that's really cool to see because Teddy's been put in some tough situations the last couple of years, and to see him win the starting job like that in Denver. Denver's a loaded roster with a top 5 defense and some really good weapons, even if Judy's going to be injured for the next couple of weeks. So that was really nice to see his performance against like a Giants defense that was pretty good last year. And then, the biggest surprise of the week was the Saints blowing out the Packers. I don't think many people saw that coming. I along with like a lot of football analytics Twitter thought Jameis was efficient despite the interceptions, with the Bucks. But the performance that he put on throwing for 5 touchdowns was something that made me happy, and I think made a lot of other people happy to see him get his shot like that.
Okay. Looking forward to week 2. Is there anything you're really excited about finding out or getting more evidence or more data, to see, to kind of think at, look at any of the kind of theories you might have right now?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of exciting things in week 2. The main thing I'm looking out for is, are the Ravens going to play the Chiefs on Sunday night the same way that they have the last 2 years, where they kind of play the aggressive man coverage, like lots of blitzes and lots of single high, but they got burned last year doing that strategy. But like that's what the Ravens do. That's how they lost the game against the Raiders, was blitzing on the final play of the game. Um, so I'm going to be really interested to see if they do that against Mahomes, because Mahomes is basically unstoppable against the blitz. And then another thing that I'm looking out for in week 2 is, how do the playoff teams, or how do last year's playoff teams that lost in week 1 respond? So like the Titans and the Packers, like I still think they should both be division favorites and stuff like that. But how are they? Are they? I mean, right now they don't seem as good as they were last year. But are they going to be in the middle of like what we saw week 1 and what they were last year? Like, are they going to be able to bounce back? Like, how do they bounce back? And how do the quarterbacks play? Stuff like that.
Okay. Any matchups you see where you think, one team is they're off, or they're, one team's really got a bigger advantage than people might notice, or is there any matchups where it's a little bit tighter than people think?
hmm Yeah, I mean, Cowboys Chargers. I think the Cowboys should be favored in that game and should be able to win that game. They get the extra rest, and they just played a loaded Bucks roster that doesn't really have a hole in it, and they played them down to the wire and probably should have won that game if a couple things go their way at the end. So I think that'll be the most interesting game of week 2, and I think I like the Cowboys to win, and win like not easily, but win probably without it being as close as people think.
Okay. You talked earlier about, how important it was for you to have open source, because that was important to you. What kind of advice would you give to like a young person out there who's thinking about this? I was okay in math. I was pretty decent in math when I was young, and I'm glad this stuff wasn't around, because I know I would have been like, oh, that's what I want to do. And then when I got to college, I'm like, oh, damn, this stuff is really hard. And then I'd been stuck. What would you tell like a young, like either middle school or high school kid who looks at the stuff you guys are doing? What kind of advice would you give them?
Yeah, I mean, I would just tell them to be really active on Twitter, because that's honestly where the ideas come from, and then that's where so much of the code is posted. Like I would have never gotten into this stuff if I wasn't on my Twitter account, seeing these graphs pop up and wanting to recreate them. And then if they want to go, out and actually recreate these, like I have a bunch of resources that I know of that I've put together before that that people can use, like coding tutorials. There's videos that I can show, and then there's like a course you can take on Coursera or edX or something like that. So if anyone if anyone's interested in that, they can reach out to me on Twitter, and I'll point them in the right direction and be able to help them get set up and everything. But yeah, just be active on Twitter, and then just try your best with the coding. It'll get better. Like when I started off, I was not thinking it was for me. I thought it was really hard, but it definitely got a lot easier. One day everything clicked, and I was starting to be able to put together like graphs and analysis and stuff like that.
Okay. So on Twitter, again, you can follow him at Tej FB Analytics. That's at TEJ FBANALYTICS, at Tej FB Analytics. Tej, man, we really appreciate it. Like I said before, you got a bright future in this business, and we really appreciate everything you guys do on Twitter and just watching you, and just trying to learn more. So we really appreciate it. Love to have you on again.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on, Christian. This was a lot of fun. Definitely enjoyed it, and I'd love to come on again.